Reflections from Torch Trust, focusing on Christian faith and sight loss.
Hello and a warm welcome to Reflections from Torch Trust, the programme that focuses on faith and disability in today's world. I'm your host, Marilyn Baker, and I'm delighted to spend the next 30 minutes with you. Today, we'll be hearing about a brand new chaplaincy service from Torch, and we'll also hear from one of the volunteers who's already involved in this exciting initiative. Torch has recently launched a brand new chaplaincy service, a ministry offering phone support to people whose lives have been affected by sight loss and who would welcome a friendly listening ear. What makes this chaplaincy unique is that the volunteers themselves have all experienced sight loss, so they bring not only empathy but personal understanding. And alongside practical support, these phone calls also offer space to explore life's challenges from a spiritual perspective. Here to tell us more about the Torch Chaplaincy service is Sarah Brookman, the visionary behind the project. She's speaking with producer Lynn Davies.
Can you tell us a little bit, please, about the chaplaincy service and how it came about?
Yeah, so the Torch Chaplaincy venture kind of was in the back of my mind, having coordinated the befriending service that Torch used to run a number of years ago, alongside my colleague Janet Erdley. So always at the back of my mind, I think, was a sense that I really saw the value in people feeling supported as they journeyed through sight loss. And there was something about knowing they were kind of less alone in that. We know that there's such a big impact for people as they lose their sight, or indeed as their sight changes. Maybe it's not straight away, but as time goes on. And so the sense that somebody is alongside just to kind of navigate that journey felt really important. So the chaplaincy service is designed to be able to offer emotional and spiritual support to anyone over the age of 18 who is losing their sight. And we hope that it will be really reaching people who could really benefit from just having a timely conversation with somebody who has either experienced sight loss themselves, or maybe somebody who is sight loss friendly, as we call it, and kind of sight loss informed, so that they can be a supportive presence over the phone.
Yeah, so you wouldn't want anyone to be calling and asking for support around their sight loss and then have the person saying, oh, poor you, because they wouldn't be experienced. So that is obviously to avoid that kind of thing.
Yes, we will just have a very small team of Christian volunteers who really do understand the nature of what people might be going through as they lose their sight or as things change in their lives. And often that's, I think, the thing. There's often a lot of change and, perhaps a loss of meaning and purpose. There's the emotional impact that we know that people who are going through sight loss tend to report less mental well-being. That's a kind of known thing. So there's the emotional side. There's also the spiritual side. I think for some people, that's a really important part of their lives. There might have been somebody who's been at church, and of course, church has changed, and it's not so easy to make the connections or to get there. But also, it might be that they have bigger questions now, and more questions, and want to just be able to have the opportunity to talk through about the concerns that they may have, whether they're big ones or little ones. We just know that sometimes having a listening ear gives some space for people to share those, and we hope that that will be really helpful.
I mean, you have sort of alluded to it a little bit, and obviously with Torch being a Christian charity, but how would you say the chaplaincy is different from sort of regular counselling service or calling the Samaritans or anything sort of related to other sight loss charities?
Yeah, I think specifically thought about the word chaplaincy because we hope that most people whether with a faith or not. And we very much hope chaplaincy will reach out to people regardless of their religious affiliation. But there's something in that word, I think, that I hope that people will understand means that they can bring that side of their lives into the conversation if they want to, that chaplaincy is usually there to offer some care and support emotionally, but also should people choose, offer some spiritual support. And the volunteers will be willing and able to do that, but very much it will be to follow what the person coming wants to talk about.
So you don't already have to have a strong Christian faith or a faith at all. If you think that this sounds interesting, you can just be someone who are losing your sight. You might not have a faith, but you might want to explore that, because I suppose sometimes when life circumstances change, like with losing your sight, people tend to ask questions they might perhaps not have asked before.
Yes, absolutely. And just to be very clear, it isn't a counselling service, so that's quite a different setup. It really is having someone alongside to be a listening ear, and maybe to offer some relevant advice if there's something in terms of signposting or other ideas or resources. So there's something about bringing some information into the situation. And yes, they don't need to have a faith, and the volunteers won't be there to proselytize, as it were, but they will be there to support if that's needed. Yeah, and I think the other thing to say is the way chaplaincy will work will be that if somebody's referred to the service, they'll have an initial chat with one of the volunteers. And it may be that just one-off conversation is enough, but it may be that depending what's going on for people, they might choose to have a short series of calls. And we'd usually say up to about 6 calls. So what it isn't is a long-term and ongoing befriending scheme. And that's probably something we just need to make sure people understand. But we do hope alongside the one-to-one support that in time we'll perhaps be able to create some small groups so people can come together perhaps with others who are going through or sharing a similar circumstances to be able to support one another. So there's developments that may come along too at some point, but we're starting with this small opportunity to be some listening support and wellbeing support for people.
If someone is listening to this and think that this is something they would like to explore, how can they get in touch with the chaplaincy service?
Yeah, we hope they will. And certainly they can ring client services at Torch Trust. And somebody there will then make a referral. They will just check that somebody fits the criteria, because obviously we're a small team, and but providing that works, we will receive a referral. It's a chaplaincy team, and then I will coordinate making sure somebody's able to give that person a call.
Okay, so maybe just to clarify the criteria then, what are they?
So it would be a listener to be able to support anybody who is new to sight loss and experiencing the life-changing impact of that, or perhaps a sudden deterioration in the sight, which has meant that new difficulties or challenges have arisen. Or it might be perhaps that somebody has lost a spouse or a partner, or possibly even a guide dog, and that then has created new challenges and new difficulties, and particularly around sight loss.
Now we're going to hear from one of the Torch Chaplaincy volunteers. Heinrich Barth lost his sight in 2019 following an aneurism in his brain, a sudden and life-altering event that brought dramatic changes. Heinrich first shared his story with producer Lynn Davies as part of the first series of Walking by Faith. In this clip, he talks about the impact of his sight loss and how, through it all, he continues to experience God's love.
My name is Heinrich, here with my wife Irene, and Yes, we do many things. And I've definitely found staying busy and active with others is very, very helpful. So we are part of a church community here in Robertsbridge, East Sussex, England. And we've been here for 2 years now. We moved over here because 5 years ago, ruptured cerebral aneurysm took my eyesight, and our grandchildren are over here, our daughter is over here, and we came to live near them, and it's been a wonderful blessing for us to have that support, as well as the church family here around us. What do I do? I spend my mornings partly doing some furniture assembly and other work with fellow church members.
Heinrich, when did you lose your sight and how did you lose it?
In June of 2019, after a day of work, I was getting a boat ready to take out on the Hudson River the next day. We come from New York State, and the river was a few miles away. And boat was ready. My wife and I spent a wonderful evening with some friends and came home together. And when we got home, I noticed the moon was just rising. So I went out to the porch, and I remember just watching the valley and the moon and how grateful we were in that moment. And that's where my memory ended, as a aneurysm ruptured in my brain, causing me to fall off the porch and sustain a traumatic brain injury. So the next month was in the neuro ICU, where I was on a ventilator for 17 days. Slowly weaned off that after surgery was able to stabilize the aneurysm. And after a month in the ICU, I went to a rehabilitation hospital where I spent a month learning to walk and talk again, and also learning what happened to me and where the last 6 weeks had gone. So eventually, in the rehab hospital, I tried to read, and I discovered I couldn't. And I discovered the eyesight in my right eye was completely gone. And in my left eye, I only had a small slit of vision, enough to, in my waking state, not realize I'd lost my vision. And learned later it was a miracle that I could see at all, because both optic nerves are so badly damaged.
How has your faith then impacted losing your sight? Because I can imagine that must have been quite a world-changing event for you, especially in the very dramatic way that it happened.
Faith has surely sustained Irene and I through the sight loss. And prior to sight loss, I'd taken health for granted, doing a great deal of driving and running a pretty busy life. And then as we came to grips with sight loss, we became very dependent on prayer and our brothers and sisters in faith to help us through the hurdle of navigating the path forward. And it was difficult, but faith was our rock.
How has your unique lived experience impacted how you see and experience God and God's love?
Well, God's love is my strength and help for every day. Whenever I'm faced with the dramatic sight loss I experienced, it's challenging. That can happen when I bump into a door frame or trip on a stair or trip over a root. And that's when I have to remember that the Lord is near. And as we read in Philippians 4, not to be anxious, and that will be upheld by prayer and petition and thanksgiving. And in it all, to know that the Lord is near. And that is our strength in the moments of anxiety that do come. So it's really the difficult moments are the ones that turn me to faith most specifically.
If you found Heinrich's story moving, you can listen to the full episode by searching for Walking by Faith from Torch Trust on your favourite podcast platform, through your smart speaker, or by visiting the Torch Trust website. Season 2 is currently out, featuring more powerful and inspiring stories just like this one. What we've heard today is a reminder that even in the most difficult seasons, when our world suddenly shifts or the path ahead feels uncertain, God doesn't leave us. He walks with us, often through the voices and presence of others, whether it's a chaplain on the phone or a story that speaks deeply into our experience. His love finds a way to reach us. Well, I'm sorry to say we're out of time for this week, but we'll be back next week with more stories and reflections. And don't forget, if you're blind or partially sighted and would like to learn more about any of the services provided by Torch, including the Hope for All project, our new chaplaincy service, the Torch Retreat, our accessible books and resources, or our other groups, our client services team would be very happy to speak to you. The number to call for information and for song requests is 01858 438 260. That's 01858 438 260. Or you can email info@torchtrust.org. You can also find us on social media. Just search for Torch Trust on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram or YouTube. We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Reflections, and so until next week, from me, Marilyn, and everyone on the Reflections team, goodbye and God bless.
You've been listening to Reflections from Torch Trust.